In 2017, Karen McManus published her debut novel, One of Us is Lying, a first-person, young adult mystery suspense novel, told from the perspective of 4 different narrators, each with their own unique voice. The plot tells of a boy who dies of anaphylaxis after ingesting a lethal dose of peanut oil that was in his water glass. Initially considered an accident, his death quickly becomes a murder investigation, with 4 of his classmates under suspicion. The 4 suspects each narrate the story, trading off each chapter and shedding light on what really happened through their own individual perspectives. The use of multiple point of views in writing is a literary technique known as multi-perspectivity and has been showcased in many critically acclaimed novels, including Gone Girl by Gillian Flynn, The Girl on the Train by Paula Hawkins, and of course, One of Us is Lying by Karen McManus. McManus's novel differentiates itself from the others, as not only are there 4 different voices being heard, but the novel is aimed towards young adults and includes more elements of drama and a coming-of-age plot, as opposed to a psychological thriller. Ability to quicken the pace of a story and thus build tension. One effective way to build tension between scenes with alternating narrators is to utilize cliffhangers and have them resolved through other characters, or to simply leave the issue unresolved until that specific character's next chapter, leaving the audience yearning for the character's next narration. An example of this is seen in McManus's work here. More people crowd the aisles, and someone edges into the pew with Officer Lopez and me. It's one of the plainclothes cops, an older guy with a buzz cut. I can tell him right away. He's not bush league like Officer Budapest. He smiles like we've met before. Nate McCauley, he asks. You got a few minutes, son? In this scene, one of the characters, Nate, is at the funeral of Simon, the boy who died. The chapter ends with him being approached by a police officer. The audience is left in the unknown, as a different character overtakes the narration. For the following 3 chapters, the other narrators are interviewed by the police, filling in the gaps and allowing the reader to easily assume that Nate had a similar experience at the police station and does not need any further elaboration to the reader. When we return to Nate's perspective, we are not shown a detailed scene of his own questioning. Instead, a few simple sentences tell us all we need to know as a reader. It was hours later. Officer Buzzcut had brought me to the station and asked me 6 different ways whether I had killed Simon. This keeps the story from getting stale, as the same scenes are not rehashed, but we are kept in the loop of what each character is going through over the course of the story. From the example, we can see that McManus ends one character's chapter on a cliffhanger and then immediately picks up another character's unfinished story, making the work compelling as the audience scrambles to keep reading and find answers to questions left open. Leaving one character in the midst of an unresolved issue and using other characters to fill in gaps is an effective way for an author to build tension and coax the reader into delving deeper into the story. Another reason a writer may choose to use multiple sources of narration is that it offers the ability to showcase new information in an engaging manner. A problem many writers face is how to naturally reveal information to the audience without it feeling contrived or inserting too much raw information, also known as info-dumping. By using multi-perspectivity, McManus is able to expose the reader to new information without overloading them or becoming repetitive. In this passage, we see how McManus gives the reader context in an engaging way. Nate's been in trouble. The gossip mill tells me he's on probation. It might be drug dealing. He's a notorious supplier, but my knowledge is purely theoretical. In this example, the character of Bronwyn ponders if Nate is drug dealing, stating that she does not know for certain and thus poses the question to the audience of what the real truth is. When the novel switches to Nate's perspective, the question is answered in a nonchalant manner, as seen from this section. I spent 4 hours after school today distributing plastic bags full of painkillers. Obviously not something I should be doing, especially since I was picked up for dealing weed over the summer and I'm on probation. McManus uses alternating narrators to naturally include this information, as, from Nate's perspective, this information is not new, it is simply part of his life. This shows us that multiple perspectives can be useful in assisting with the execution of other literary techniques, such as backstory. A crucial factor in using multiple narrators is ensuring that each narrator has a distinct voice, recognizable enough that the reader immediately knows who is narrating. An excerpt from the text demonstrates how McManus competently uses voice. First, an extract from the character of Addie. I took one look at his dimples and summer sky blue eyes and knew he was the one for me. It's just a bonus he turned out beautiful. Here we exposed to the character of Addie's voice, which showcases the romantic part of her personality. Now when we look at the voice of Nate's character, my probation officer isn't the worst. She's in her 30s, not bad looking, and has a sense of humor, but she's a pain in my ass about school. When writing for Addie, McManus uses more flowery language and often writes in longer sentences. This slows the pace down and shows the reader more of Addie's personality, simply from the way she perceives the events around her. Similarly, the reader also gains insight into the character of Nate, though his voice is more clipped with short, sharp sentences, and his brooding personality is often reflected during his chapters of narration. We can see how this technique is utilized through McManus's narrators, in this case, Nate and Addie, who both have noticeably different voices. A key factor in effectively using multiple narrators is to ensure that each narrator is distinguishable from each other, and not only in the form of voice, but in their characterization. Each of McManus's narrators is unique in their own way, and while this is shown through their voice, it is also shown through the way the characters interact with each other, the decisions they make, and the way the other characters perceive them. It is imperative as a writer that when telling a story through multiple narrators, that you create these characters to be unique. They must be a character that could stand alone and be worthy of being a sole protagonist. If these 4 narrators were too similar, the text would become stale and there would be no point to multiple narrators, as their perspectives would be unlikely to offer anything special to the story that has not already been said or could be said by another narrator. One of the benefits of using diverse characters with multi-perspectivity is being able to expand your target audience, as having multiple voices means that people are more likely to relate to at least one character. As mentioned, One of Us is Lying is a young adult novel, with the main characters being teenagers who attend high school, and while it is aimed at a younger audience, people outside of this age bracket may still be able to relate to the book through the broad range of personalities highlighted. Having an audience relate to your character is sure to make the text more engaging for them. Even if they do not quite see themselves in these characters, they are most likely able to say, "Hey, I know a person just like that," and therefore may feel a stronger connection to the story. McManus has stated that classic teenage movies such as The Breakfast Club were a source of inspiration for her work. This is prevalent in the way that each narrator is a different high school archetype. In these excerpts from the novel, we can see the way each of the characters is first described. First off, we have brooding, mysterious bad boy Nate, described as messy, dark hair, ratty leather jacket, screams can't be bothered. Addie is initially portrayed to be the popular cheerleader, obsessed with her equally popular boyfriend who lacks depth. Not a thought in her head except her boyfriend and whatever petty power plays happening with her friends this week. Now we move on to Bronwyn, the uptight, bookish, nerdy girl. Always trying to join things, or start things for other people to join, and then be in charge of all the things she joined or started. Finally, Cooper is initially shown to be the all-American, charming athlete. There's not a female teacher at Bayview who can resist his all-American charm. He's a gentleman. From these samples, it is apparent that McManus effectively uses multi-perspectivity to create unique, fully fleshed characters that a wide range of people can relate to. While these characters are vastly different, they mesh well and keep the story fresh with narration from people that have differing voices, backgrounds, and personalities. We know these people. We are these people. And that is a clear example of the impact this technique can have on an audience, especially regarding engagement and relatability. As an admirer of this technique, I myself have tried to modulate it in my own work. In the following extract, I demonstrate how to effectively use differing voices. The following is from a short story I have written titled Release. It tells of a family, each member hiding something dark from the world. It is a reflective piece that shows how fragile some families are, and poses the question of how well do you really know your loved ones. It is a work in progress, but to properly learn this technique, you must practice and you must make mistakes. Everything is a learning experience. So yeah, I cheated. I was lonely and angry. She wasn't giving me enough attention, and I needed it. Sure, I regret it, but sometimes I don't. It made me realize how much I love her and our kids. I look at her sleeping face. She's so oblivious, and for that I'm thankful. She'll never know, and I'll never tell. We love each other, and that's what matters. I brush her hair back, kiss her face, and roll over. This section is written from the perspective of my character Anthony, the father and husband in the story. Here he is reflecting on an instance where he cheated on his wife. In the next section, I write from the perspective of Anthony's wife, Holly. Through the dark, I can feel his eyes burning into my face, and I wish more than anything that he would stop. I have to stop myself from physically cringing when he kisses my face. The feel of his touch used to make me weak, but now I only feel disgust, and not just at him, but at myself for feeling this way. Once he rolls away, it is my turn to stare at him. Here is my husband, this perfect father, this perfect man. I look at him, and I feel nothing. These two extracts from my story show how I myself have harnessed this technique. Firstly, there is a contrast between both voices. For instance, Anthony's tone is more laid back, and even though he recognizes that he has done this horrible thing, he is at peace. In a grammatical difference, I used shorter sentences and more informal language to give the reader an insight into his personality. As seen, I have done the opposite for Holly, using longer sentences with more formal and flowery language, making both characters' voices distinguishable from each other. To make this piece more interesting to the reader, I have included a link between both characters. Obviously, from reading the story, the audience has the knowledge that Anthony has cheated on his wife, and upon shifting to Holly's perspective, the audience knows that Holly does not feel love for her husband anymore. Here is where we see the disparity between the two characters. Anthony believes that his wife still loves him, but Holly has no idea that he was unfaithful. Now the story becomes engaging to the reader, because they have been exposed to these secrets. They can see where the pieces connect and how these characters are oblivious. Making use of this technique invites the reader into the story, almost as if they are some sort of godlike figure who knows all, making the text much more intriguing. To summarize, the correct use of multi-perspectivity in writing has many potential benefits and can enhance other literary techniques, such as voice, backstory, and characterization. Karen McManus's novel, One of Us is Lying, clearly demonstrates the effectiveness of using multiple. McManus makes use of vastly different characters and the unique voices they have, making her text not only more engaging but relatable. I encourage every writer to try this technique. It is extremely fun to play with. It may be high risk, but it is certainly high reward.